All right, I welcome you to today's conversation in labor economics. And I should proudly say to you that I've had time to analyze the questions, most of the questions in labor economics. So it's very important that, first of all, before we go to solving the questions, we understand firstly the concepts first. So I want you to pay attention to the way how we are going to explain these concepts. They should sink, understand them. Then later on, we will use these same concepts to answer the questions. Okay. Please, I implore you to pay attention. Don't just take this as a casual conversation. It's not really casual, and you have to follow through this recording. Ensure that if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, you subscribe to the channel and be part of this amazing excellence family. What is it that I want us to discuss? It's not really a lot, but we want to focus on now the demand for labor demand. We'll define what it is, the responsiveness of quantity demanded for labor to the changes in wages. What determines the elasticity of demand, and what could be some of the factors affecting the same demand for labor. We'll examine the reasons as why the slope, of course, the slope for the labor demand curve is downward sloping. Why is that the effect? So are some of the key issues that we will discuss in this conversation. We will conclude with the income and substitution effect. Okay. Now, a little bit about labor economics. From the conversation that we had previously, we had time to just define what it is all about, and that was explained to us. But you see, we need to understand what is meant by labor demand. Okay, we know that the labor market is made up of two sides. There's a demand side of labor, which is actually, made up of the employers. Okay, those friends who made the decisions to hire labor at a given price. That's the part for demand. And the supply is made up of those employees or those individuals, the households, that are willing, okay, and are able. It's about willingness and ability to offer their labor services at the best possible wage rate that has been given. You get it from here that the price for labor here is wage, the wage rate. So there are those people that are willing and are able to provide labor at that point. That's the supply. And the demand for labor is not just the start of the number of the labor hours an employer or is willing and able to hire, okay, on a particular wage rate, but actually is a study of the changes on the numbers of workers that are employed by the firm that cause changes in the demand for the product. It causes changes in the choices of the available technologies or the different methods, techniques that we can use, to convert the inputs into output. And actually the amount of labor the firm can acquire at a given rate. Okay. So this is what usually happens. We can see that if the wage rate increases, then there will be a higher cost on part of the firm, right? If you increase the wage rate, then the costs of production or the cost of labor, as far as the firm is concerned, will be very high. It will be expensive to hire labor, right? Now, because of the same, the firms will try to reduce the quantities of labor that they are getting just because of this increase in the same. As a result, they will start laying off some of the workers, right? Now, the decline in employment due to some smaller scale of production is standing the sealed effect. And actually, when all this has been done, you will analyze properly together with me that labor does, the quantities of labor demanded do decrease with an increase in labor. That's the message we are speaking. Now, what is elasticity of demand of labor? This is what you need to get. So the elasticity of demand for labor, it does depend on the elasticity of demand for the output. This is a derived elasticity. Pay attention to that. So you're saying that the elasticity for demand of labor, okay, it is based or heavily dependent on the elasticity for the demand for the what? Of the output. If, for example, look at the demand for labor will generally be inelastic if their wages form only a small proportion of the total wage. The demand for that labor will not be elastic, right? That's what it means to be inelastic. To be elastic is to respond, to be responsive to the changes. So it will not be responsive to the changes. Why should it not be responsive to the changes? This is because the demand of the other, or on the other hand, or this same demand for labor is actually only a small proportion of the total wage. Now, the demand on the other hand will be elastic if the demand for the commodity producers is elastic. So it's about what is the demand for the commodity the labor produces. I'm emphasizing on that. So the elasticity of demand is based on the elasticity of demand on the product or the commodity that is being produced. So if you are producing less of the the commodity that you're producing, let's say, is inelastic, right? Like people are not responsive to the changes in prices of that particular commodity that you're producing, then you find that the demand for that particular labor is inelastic. It's not responsive. For example, let's look at the production of pharmaceuticals or some chemicals, medicines. You know that medicines, the elasticity of demand for medicines is usually inelastic. Now, because of the same, even the demand for labor that produces medicines is not highly responsive. Okay, so this is very important for you to notice. Yeah, but when you are producing a commodity that is not inelastic, whose demand is not inelastic, you find that even the demand for the labor that it should be used to produce that particular commodity, it will be inelastic. So the demand for labor also depends on the price of the cooperating factors, you know. For example, you suppose that the machines are costly, and as in the case of maybe Zambia, obviously more labor will be employed if machines are costly, right? If machines are costly, that would mean that people, instead of using machines, will embark on, employing labor. But on the other hand, if you see the machines becoming, less costly, cheap, people would result into using these machines. Now, the demand for labor will increase. This is what happens. Another factor that influences the demand for labor is actually the technical progress. So I've already said that it's about the prices of the machines or prices of capital, the machines. That one is a factor that influences demand. The other one is technical progress. The technical progress. Okay. What is technical progress? Is about the development that has occurred in technology as well. This will affect the demand for labor, because you can see now the introduction of artificial intelligence, where robots are trying to come in and do most of the work that can be done by the human capital, labor. You see that most of the demand that we had for labor will start decreasing. Now, in some cases, labor and machinery are used in a definite ratio. For example, the introduction of automatic, looms reduces the demand for labor, or those automatic robots, among others. Now, after considering all relevant factors, you see that the demand for the product, technical conditions, and the prices of the cooperating factors, the wages are governed by one fundamental factor, which is actually the marginal productivity. I've explained here. I'm saying that we have the prices of the commodity that you're producing. Then there is also prices of the machines, the technical progress here, and the very demand, let me repeat, the demand of the commodity that you are selling. All these things will affect the demand of labor. So there is prices of the commodity that you are selling, that the demand of the commodity that you're selling, the technical progress that has occurred, and the prices of the machines. But all these, usually, they are governed by what is known as marginal productivity. And what do we mean by marginal productivity? Marginal productivity referring to the contribution of one unit, the contribution of one unit of labor to the output. The additional contribution of labor, or an additional unit of labor to the output. When you add labor, right, you employ some more unit of labor, you expect some output to increase again. Now, the rate of change of the output as a result of an additional unit of labor employed is what we call the marginal product of labor. That's very important for you to notice, the issue of the marginal product of labor. Now, what about elasticity of demand? We have already said that the elasticity of labor demand measures the responsiveness of demand for labor when there is a change in the ruling market wage rate. So when the prices of labor or the wage rate changes, the question is, how does the demand for labor respond? That responsiveness of demand for labor when there is a change in the ruling wage rate is what is called the elasticity of labor demand. The elasticity of labor demand it depends on several factors. And let's start. Number one, we have got the labor cost, even as a percentage of total costs. We remember, in every production we incur some cost, yeah? There is some cost that we incur. Then the question that we ask ourselves is, how much of that total cost is labor cost? So in short, the percentage of labor cost in the total cost. So when labor expenses are high, or are a high proportion of total cost, then labor demand is more elastic, right? To be more elastic simply means to be more responsive than a business where fixed costs of capital are the dominant business expenses. So in many services or in many service jobs, such as maybe the customer service centers, the gas boiler repairs, labor costs, they are a high proportion of the total cost of the business. So you find that the labor costs forms that large portion of the total cost. So the summary of it is that as long as out of the total cost, more of that cost is labor, then labor will be elastic. And the opposite is true. The other factor affecting elasticity is the easy and the cost of factor substitution. How quickly can we substitute labor? And if we are to substitute this labor, how much does it cost? Get it that labor will be more elastic when a firm can substitute quickly and easily between labor and capital inputs. This is very important. If it is easy for a firm to switch from the use of human beings and start using maybe computers, start using machines, and without so much cost, that is even cheaper for that. If that is cheaper in that case, then yeah, you will see the firm changing and start heading towards that. So when specialized labor and capital is needed, then the demand for labor will be more inelastic again with respect to the wage rate. So that simply means that when you need specialized labor, okay, then the demand for labor will be more inelastic, which means it will not be responsive to the wage rate. Whether we increase the wage rate or not, still the firms would demand the same quantity or same units of labor. Maybe an example we'll do, it might be fairly easy and cheap to replace security guards with the cameras, but a hotel would find it almost impossible to replace a hotel cleaning staff with machinery. That's an example. Yeah, that you should understand. Then the other factor affecting elasticity of labor demand is the price elasticity of demand for the final output produced. This is what I just said. I said that the demand or the elasticity is derived from the elasticity of the output or the commodity that is being produced. So, for example, if a firm is operating in a high competitive market where the final demand for the product is price elastic, then they will have little market power to pass on higher wage cost to consumers, actually through a higher price. So the demand for labor may therefore be more elastic as a consequence. So the higher the elasticity of demand of the product that you're producing or commodity, then the more elastic the demand for labor associated with that commodity that becomes. What are some of the determinants of elasticity of demand for labor? What is it that determines elasticity of demand for labor? The elasticity of demand for labor is dependent on the proportion of labor cost in total cost. This I've already explained. It's about how much of the costs is the labor, right? So a change in wages would have a significant impact on costs, and hence the demand would actually be elastic. Yeah. For example, if your labor costs form a large proportion of total cost. The other factor affecting elasticity of demand for labor is the ease with which labor can be substituted by capital. How easy is it that you can switch from the use of labor to the use of machines? You see that demand will again be elastic depending on the presence of substitutes. and the elasticity of demand for the product that is being produced. This is the message being spoken here. That a rise in wages increases the cost of production, which in turn raise the price of the product. So this causes demand for the product to contract and demand for labor to fall. The other factor that affects the labor demand, the price elasticity of labor demand, is the time period, right? So for example, you know that the demand for labor is usually more elastic in the long run. Okay, as long as the more time has passed, like a lot of time passed, you see the demand being elastic. And this is true. Then you have the qualifications and the skills required. The more qualifications and skills needed, then the more inelastic supply will be. So for instance, a large increase in the wage paid to brain surgeons will not have effect on the supply of labor. Why? This is especially true in the short run, as it will take years to gain the requisite qualifications and experience. So it's about how qualified those people that you want. Because if you want a lot of highly qualified people, then the demand for that labor will really be inelastic. So you see that qualification and skills, then there'll be more inelastic supply. So you will see all this, the demand will be that inelastic. Now, the length of training period as well does matter. Okay, it affects elasticity of demand. For example, a long period of training, it may put some people off the occupation. It will also mean that there will be a delay before those who are willing to take up are fully qualified to join the labor force. Okay, so both effects make the supply of demand of labor to be inelastic. Now, the level of employment as well is one of them that affects. Then the mobility of labor, the easier workers find it easy to change jobs, to move from one area to another, the easier it will be for an employer to recruit more labor by raising the wage rate. Okay, then the degree of vocation, that is, the stronger the attachment of workers to their jobs, then the more, inelastic supply tends to be in case of a decrease in wage rate. Now, so you see that the time period here matters as well. What could be some of the factors now affecting the demand for labor, right? The following are some of the factors affecting demand for labor. Number one, we have the product demand, right? Yeah. You will see that if the price of the firm's output is there, or the product that the firm is producing is highly demanded, then the firms may be willing to demand more of labor to produce that. Technological changes also influence, in that the new technologies will decrease the demand for some type of labor, and this we are aware of this. That the coming of new technologies will affect the demand of labor. Then we also have the price of other factors of production. Now, if the price of using capital maybe decreases in relation or relative to the wage rate, then a firm substitutes capital for labor and increases the quantity of capital it uses. So you have to look at the price of the others. If it becomes cheaper to use capital, then you have to get capital instead of getting labor. So you have to pay attention to the price of the other products. Okay? This is very, very important. Now, price of other factors also being factors as well. That really does matter. Now, maybe we may try to answer the question, why is the demand curve, the labor demand curve, downward sloping? Okay. Yeah, the labor demand curve is downward sloping because of the law of diminishing returns. That's the answer. It is because of the law of diminishing returns to scale. What does that mean? It means that as more workers are hired, then the marginal product of labor begins to fall, causing the marginal revenue, marginal product of labor as well to fall. So you will see that as you employ more of the workers, as you hire, their contribution, additional contribution in the output, it does decline and it is reducing and reducing, which means the contribution of a new worker may not be as much as that one for the previous worker. This is what usually happens. So it is very important and we need to do that. Now, mathematically, how can we derive the marginal product of labor? The marginal product of labor, or marginal, let me start with marginal revenue. Marginal revenue is found by saying change in total revenue divided by change in what? In output, which is same as the derivative, the TR over the what? The Q, which means we are differentiating the total revenue function with respect to quantity. That gives us the marginal revenue. Now, the marginal product of labor as well is about differentiating the total product. Let me just change here and put P where there is P to represent total product of labor. So the total product of labor that we're given should be differentiated with respect to output. That gives you the marginal product of labor. That is very important. A question that we are going to do, we'll do better. Now, at which point is profit maximized? Get it from here that profit is only maximized at a point where marginal revenues equals to marginal costs. The point at which marginal revenue equals to marginal cost, that's a point at which profit is maximized. So you have to make sure that the total contribution or the total increase, additional increase in the revenue is equal to the additional cost of that particular labor. Maybe I should explain it like this. As you get more of labor, right, you are employing people. Those people that you are employing, what will happen is that they come with a cost. They are going to be paid. So it's a cost. It's part of cost to the company, right? That's cost. So as that is costing the company to employ those people, one thing that you should understand is that we have to weigh to make sure that the costs of employing those individuals, the additional cost does not equal, does not, become greater than the additional revenue that comes because of the employing those that particular person. Yeah, this is very, very important, and you need to understand this. Okay. Now, the other aspect that is very important for us to discuss is the issues of wage rise. What is the impact of wage rise to the labor market? All right. Let us analyze. You and I know that the opportunity cost of taking maybe leisure is the monetary value of the wages that you forgo. If you decide to sit, is the opportunity cost may be that sacrifice you're making for that money. And so most individuals who face choice between hours of work and hours of leisure, you have to choose. Should I just sit and relax or should I work? That's always the time to decide that you have to decide. Should I sleep or should I study? That's very important. In as much as sleeping is important, it's nice, it feels good, but you should know that when you sleep, other work remains. But at the same time, you should know that sleeping is important, because if you keep on studying, just know that again you're sacrificing sleeping. So you have to trade off all these issues. So the income effect of a rise in the wage rate has got two parts. There is a positive one and a negative one. The positive income effect is when a higher wage causes people to want to work more hours in order to reach a target or desired income. That's a positive effect. But the negative one is when a target income has been reached by those same people. Okay, then they want now to spend more of time on leisure rather than earning more income. That's a negative effect of a wage rise. So the substitution effect of a rise in the wage rate is really, really important. The substitution effect is actually including a rise in the real wage that should increase the opportunity cost of what? Leisure. Therefore, a higher wage will always cause people to be incentivized to work longer hours, right? But the income effect may work in the opposite direction, and this is what we've just discussed. And this is what we are trying to show you. See now that the demand curve has started curving what? The supply curve is curving backward. Why should the supply curve backward after some time? This is just because of now the changes where income and substitution effect, they cause longer hours to be worked. But as I have just said, you will see that as the income increases, people will be wanting to work. They will supply more of labor. But again, at some point, as you keep on increasing, at some point, that higher increase, it may cause those people again to want more of leisure. That's why you see the supply curve again start curving behind. This is because of the negative effect of the income effect. That's the negative effect that I've just told you about. Yeah, so you have to, as you employ people as HR, it is very important that you understand that the backward bending labor supply curve is as a result of a negative income effect that outweighs the positive one. We know that the positive one simply means when you increase the wage, people would want to work more hours, right? But again, at some point when you increase, we may have a negative effect, like if you increase too much. So we have to weigh and look at the equilibrium price, the normal price of labor or wage rates that you can actually assign. This is very important and you need that. So at your own time, we give you this short assignment. You should be able to give at least a brief explanation of how the minimum wage laws work and the payment of taxes and subsidies may really affect this, like the impact of that. Is there any question? Assuming the silence means there is no question, that's a good thing. Then very soon we'll practice questions. I'll send you the practice question, but please understand the few things that I've, brought to light.